The election is coming up soon. People have already started voting, and some people have already raised some concerns about how secure these votes are. We took some time to speak to someone whose job it is to make sure that things stay fair and accurate. Let me give people a little bit of a description of at least your title. So you do some work for the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights within the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. That's a long title, a big name.
Yes.
To boil it down, though, basically you keep an eye on election security around the world, including the U.S. So can you give us a little bit of a sense of what that job looks like?
Right. The title is a mouthful, I admit, but in fact, it's a relatively simple case. What we do normally is that we arrive 5-6 weeks before election day, send out long-term observers, have a handful, well, basically more than a handful, about a dozen analysts, usually in the capital. The long-term observers and the election analysts do their assessment job. We come out with an interim report, and we are going to produce a preliminary statement about what we have seen and how we assess that.
A lot of people are concerned about the election systems and the security there. Can you talk about some of the safeguards that are in place? Is it possible to hack an election system here in the U.S.?
The answer partly depends on how broadly you conceive the election framework. It's obvious that it's much more difficult to hack the physical infrastructure of that is voting machines, for example, or counting machines, than, for example, hacking the email account of Roger Stone. Now, which of them has what effect is debatable. But if you have a broad picture, then there are much softer targets for hacking than the electoral infrastructure in itself.
We've had several instances here in North Carolina just in the couple of months, past few months leading up to this election, that have given people some concern. There was a delay in the delivery of some absentee ballots because of some legal issues with RFK being on the ballot in this state. Then there was a hurricane that moved through and created tons of chaos, and there's been some fallout after that as well. How is it that you can analyze or weigh some of those unanswerables? How do you know that a delay of a few weeks on absentee ballots could have swayed the election one way or another? It feels like an impossible question to answer.
No, certainly we are not talking about changing the outcome. There are very few instances where you can explicitly figure out what did change the outcome or what didn't, even after years of investigation into it, as there are cases in the United States for that. So by impact, we don't usually mean immediate impact in changing the outcome. In impact, we mean that it might have contributed to, for example, changing the nature of the voter information. Therefore, it might have an impact on how informed voters are.
You often give advice to countries to improve their election security. What advice do you have or suggestions have you had for the United States, or just simply to let the voters here know what is important when it comes to securing these elections properly?
One of them is that there should be a rethinking of redistricting, for example. That has an impact, actually, on elections, we know. And we have a long-standing recommendation that redistricting should be rethought and possibly given to an independent body.
I do find it interesting that in the current climate, most of the discussion around election security is in the terms of fraud or some type of fraudulent behavior that's happening. But the one thing that you brought up was something that's baked into our system of government, which is redistricting and gerrymandering.
Right. Well, of course, I think everybody who knows something about how redistricting goes and how elections develop would know that this has a much bigger impact of whose votes counts to what degree than anything related to physical security of the elections. Now, the difference is that it became clear that this is something that needs to be looked at. By now, I think both sides usually claim that, yes, there needs to be something needs to be done about redistricting as well.
Can you speak to the importance of this type of work that you are doing? Because what we have learned over time is that these election results seem to be only as powerful as the belief that people have in them.
We believe that it can have an impact. We are in it in a long game, and we don't expect dramatic immediate changes because we made some recommendation. But if it builds up over time, actually it might contribute to some of the changes which could be useful to the voters as well.
Tamás, thank you so much. I appreciate your time talking to our viewers tonight.
Thank you very much, Dan. It was a pleasure.